Lauren, thank you. Turning now to our Space Coast, where NASA and SpaceX will be standing down from their scheduled mission to deliver cargo to the International Space Station. The reason? A possible fuel leak. News 6's James Sparvero is in Brevard County with more.
Our day-to-day activities involve running most of those experiments.
Science experiments and supplies reach the International Space Station astronauts like Bob Hines through cargo missions.
Cargo Dragon Solar's.
However, for its upcoming resupply run, NASA and SpaceX say there's now an issue with the Dragon capsule's thrusters. With the potential fuel leak discovered, NASA says the launch is no longer happening this week. Mission Control in Houston telling the space station crew to possibly expect the launch June 28th at the earliest.
We are no-go for nominal EVAs.
In a press conference last month, NASA addressed a spacesuit leak during a spacewalk by astronaut Matthias Maurer.
It was noted that Maurer had water in his helmet.
The Dragon flying to the station for the cargo mission is supposed to bring home Maurer's spacesuit for a closer look. Until then, NASA says it's canceling all regular extravehicular activities.
So this delay definitely has an impact on resolving that problem, and until they get the suit back and fix this, normal spacewalks are no-go on the space station.
And NASA and SpaceX say they'll wait to officially announce the next launch date until after the exact source of the problem discovered during fueling is identified. In Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, I'm James Sparvero, getting results, News 6.
Well, I'm going to end all of my videos here. I'm not going to post anymore because I kind of feel like I'm picking on the children at this point. NASA can barely go to low Earth orbit. It's very obvious that they never went to the moon. It was Nixon conspiracy propaganda. The duck and cover, the radiation denial propaganda had assured that they could just say they went and back and no one's going to challenge it because no one can. So, the end. Everyone's fighting over low Earth orbit. Russia and China have taken low Earth orbit. It's a military zone now. We aren't as strong or capable. And so, unfortunately, that leaves us in this position where we're struggling to come up with suits, with crafts, with the ability to keep our satellites up there without them taking them out. And that's it. So, while Orion is being rolled out and the SLS is going to launch to the moon and all of you guys are swept away by amazing stories of faraway black holes and all the celestial bodies that we're playing on, helicopters on Mars, right? You guys can't go to low Earth orbit without everything you've got. So, for 10 years now, I have argued whether or not radiation is real, the amount of radiation, and where the levels of radiation are. I've pointed out the history of the space agenda and the space race and space technologies. It's all on my page, and I don't feel I need to go any further into this. America can't go to the moon. No one can go to the moon. Governments use propaganda, and they lie all the time. Everything is in history has shown this. There's no one that can say that humans don't bond together to do that. I mean, look at what we did with the Manhattan Project. There's always an example to show that we are full of shit. So, while Elon Musk is the new golden goat, one of our great golden cows we worship, he's just NASA, and NASA can barely go to low Earth orbit. They're struggling with their suits, they're struggling with the crafts, they're struggling with the military aspect of the fact that Russia and China want them out. So, pretend that you went, pretend that you're going, pretend that you're already on other planets doing helicopter rides, and that's all you can do. Meanwhile, I'm going to watch as the sun heats up the Earth. Climate change exists because radiation.
3 taikonauts are Chinese astronauts carrying their nation's pride and the ambition of making China the world's new space superpower. They blasted off from the Zhouchuan Satellite Launch Center on the edge of the Gobi Desert and in 15 minutes reached lower Earth orbit. The launch was broadcast live on state television, a sign of China's growing confidence in its technological might.
The Long March 2FY-14 carrier rocket has accurately sent the Shenzhou 14 manned spacecraft to the designated orbit. The solar panels have stretched and operated normally. Now I announce the Shenzhou 14 manned spacecraft launch mission a success.
The mission is full of symbolism. The three are part of China's second generation of astronauts. Liu Yang is among them. She was the first Chinese woman in space and is now making her return after 10 years.
It gives me great pleasure to be able to grow up in this era, to integrate my personal dream with the interests of the whole country, and to be entrusted to complete the country's first manned manual rendezvous and docking mission.
The Shenzhou 14 spacecraft was designed keeping temperature, oxygen levels, humidity and comfort in mind, with advances in its docking system.
During previous rendezvous and docking, the orbit control strategies were all decided and implemented by ground teams. In the current fast automated rendezvous and docking, all the orbit control strategies are generated from calculations by the spacecraft and then independently implemented by the spaceship.
In 2003, China became the third country to launch a manned spacecraft into the Earth's orbit. 42 years after the former Soviet Union sent the first human into space. But since 2016, under President Xi Jinping, missions to the Moon and Mars have accelerated. President Xi says turning China into a space superpower is a critical national priority, as space exploration becomes a new battleground for Chinese competition and influence. Priyanka Gupta, Al Jazeera.
Journalist Leo Enright covers the space industry, and he says China is pushing hard to establish itself as a space power.
I think now the prospect of a Chinese woman or man on the surface of the moon within the next 10 years is very real indeed. And they've declared that that is their ultimate objective. The speed with which they're building this space station is really extraordinary. There is nothing comparable in the history of spaceflight, and this must cause particular concern for the Russians, because we're now at the point where the Chinese appear to be overtaking the Russians as a big space power, and that will cause enormous consternation in Moscow. The Russians made absolutely clear and publicly that they were looking to the Chinese potentially as their new partners in space after the invasion of Ukraine, when all their Western partners pulled back decisively. Now we see the Chinese playing it very, very cautiously. The idea now that China and Russia would collaborate on a moon base is beginning to look a little bit less certain, because China is being very, very careful how it handles Russia in the wake of the Ukraine invasion.
Meanwhile, China is taking over low Earth orbit. They've got a new space station up, and they are going to militarize space. Russia has already helped them. They've come together. They're working together to militarize space. And of course, they're saying, oh, we're going to go to the moon. Why would they say such a thing? Well, what happened last time? What's the whole fucking riff in Interstellar? Interstellar goes off on this very clearly. What does the teachers say? What does the world actually need? Farmers. And yet, what are we doing? We're racing to the moon? A brilliant piece of propaganda. We spent billions of dollars on useless equipment. So, China says we're going to the moon. Meanwhile, China and Russia are taking low Earth orbit. And we're wasting how much on SLS? Fake moon landing propaganda? This is another Nixon conspiracy nonsense. Look over here while we're losing the battle. This time it's not Vietnam. This time it's a commercial and economical war. Kind of was last time, but this time it's just nothing but that. And you've lost. You can't low Earth orbit. China's got a space station. The Mir was successful. Skylab wasn't. The International Space Station was put up by Russia. You can't put up a space station. America's over. This is the best they can do, is to join with Russia and China in their endeavors.
Murph is a great kid. She's really bright, but she's been having a little trouble lately. She brought this in to show the other students the section on the lunar landings.
Yeah, that's one of my old textbooks. She always loved the pictures.
It's an old federal textbook. We've replaced them with the corrected versions.
Corrected.
Explaining how the Apollo missions were fake to bankrupt the Soviet Union.
don't believe we went to the moon?
I believe it was a brilliant piece of propaganda that the Soviets bankrupted themselves, pouring resources into rockets and other useless machines.
Useless machines.
And if we don't want a repeat of the excess and wastefulness of the 20th century, then we need to teach our kids about this planet, not tales of leaving it.
You know, one of those useless machines they used to make was called an MRI. And if we had any of those left, the doctors would have been able to find the cyst in my wife's brain before she died instead of afterwards. And then she'd have been the one sitting there listening to this instead of me, which would have been a good thing because she was always the calmer one.
I'm sorry about your wife, Mr. Cooper. But Murph got into a fistfight with several of her classmates over this Apollo nonsense. So we thought it would be best to bring you in and see what ideas you might have for dealing with her behavior on the home front.
Yeah, you know what? There's a game tomorrow night. She's going through a bit of a baseball phase. Her favorite team's playing. There's gonna be candy and soda. I think I'll take her to that.